Good morning, this is August 11th. Thought I'd give you a quick update on my hydroponic tomato garden. What you're now viewing is a large, ripe brandywine. I think maybe I should enter this in the ugly ductic tomato contest. I mean, there's one at you, BHP gardener in mean shoes. It is ugly, but I'm hoping it's pretty tasty. I'll find out shortly. There's several more brandywine set on this plant. This is deep water culture. To the right is my largest tomato plant. This plant is better than 9 foot tall. I just had to get up on the step ladder and use a couple more trellis clips because the top of the plant was laying down on a tin roof and I was afraid it might get baked. In any case, I don't know what this tomato is. I thought it was a pink Caspian, but I don't believe that's the case now. Most of these tomatoes are 2 to 3 inches. This has been my best yield. Picked 4 tomatoes so far off this plant, and there was 58 tomatoes set on now. Excuse me, 53 with 4 picks, so that's a total of 57 on a yield on this plant. Now, like I say, I don't know what this tomato is. It's pretty tasty, but not as good as a Big Beef or a Hillbilly, which I have had in years gone by. But in any case, I wouldn't mind having another plant like that, or at least have my other plants yield this good, or even half this good. Here you are looking out through my tomato privacy curtain. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, this is my front porch, and it's completely hemmed in tomatoes, and they've grown clear to the roof. This particular plant is a Sunglow cherry. It is absolutely loaded. It's about 7 foot tall. I would expect there's at least a couple hundred cherry tomatoes on this plant. Some have already ripened. They're kind of a yellowish orange. These are very tasty tomato, quite sweet. You're now looking at a Big Beef. This has been my best plant as far as quality. The plant is very healthy. I picked 8 tomatoes off of it. It's one of the best tasting tomatoes I've ever had. It's kind of funny, here just a few days ago I had a cluster of 4 ripe Big Beefs right about here, and one little tiny baby beef green tomato right next to it. Well, the Big Beefs has been picked, and that little tiny green tomato in 3 days is more than doubled in size. Now this plant has about 15 to 20 more tomatoes on it. Some are quite large, and I'm expecting I'll see 25 or 30 tomatoes on this. And the plant is very healthy. I'm taking several clones off of it, and I'll definitely have more tomato or Big Beef tomatoes next year. You're now looking at a Super Steak. This is another very good tomato, very healthy plant. I've picked my largest tomato so far off this plant. This plant probably has 10 or 12 good tomatoes on it right now. And the next plant is a big boy. I've picked about 6 tomatoes off of it. This is an old-time hybrid. It goes clear back to when I was a little boy. As you can see, there's some quite large tomatoes on this plant. Some are starting to turn white, so I'm assuming that very shortly we'll be picking more ripe big boys. You're now looking at a brandywine I had to reassess my values on the Brandywine. Different gardeners had told me that Brandywine doesn't have a good yield. Well, I have 4 Brandywines. Only one in a Dutch bucket, which is the one you're viewing, and it's doing very nice. As you can see, there's 2 plants, actually 3 tomatoes here. One is about 5 inches and one about 4, then one just a small one. But this plant has about 12 tomatoes on it, and numerous blossom, and the plant's still growing. I think I'll see 25 or 30 on here. So if it's as tasty as everybody tells me, I think indeed I will have some more Brandywines next year. The next plant over is supposed to be a Tiny Tim cherry tomato. I do have my doubts. There's a lot of tomatoes set on, but the plant is at least 5.5 foot tall, and Tiny Tims are only supposed to go to 3 feet. Of course, you never know when you supercharge a tomato, even a dwarf tomato in a Dutch bucket system, it might double in size. The next 2 plants are hillbillies. This has been a very good producer in past years, and these are very healthy plants. They're about 6 foot tall. They do not have any fruit set on. They do have a lot of buds, and I expect the blossoms will open up soon, and I'll have a late harvest of hillbillies. This is a striped, a red and yellow striped, very tasty tomato. It's kind of shaped like a beefsteak, but yellow and red striped. The next plant, 2 plants over, are cherry tomatoes, both a red cherry and a sun glow. These plants have really grown. They clear up next to the gutter, under the porch roof. I couldn't ask much more on these plants. I haven't picked any yet, but they're loaded. I'll get lots of cherry tomatoes off of these plants. Come over here, we have another red cherry tomato. It's absolutely loaded. And I have a clone cherry that was the first clone in my Dutch buckets this year. And it's a good 5.5 to 6 foot tall, and it too has cherry tomatoes set on. This Dutch bucket system has really paid off. Here we are from the outside looking in on my Dutch bucket system tomatoes. As you can see, they've all grown clear up to the gutter, and they're all loaded. In fact, they've grown too much. They've branched out, they're breaking down. In fact, here's one that's broke right here, but I have trellis strings and clips everywhere. Later on today, I'll add some more strings. One thing about it, this baler twine is cheap, and so are trellis clips. As you can see here, the hillbilly tomatoes is clear up past the light. Now, the street light I had here was on until a month ago. That might be one reason the hillbillies haven't bore fruit yet. I turned the light off knowing that sooner or later they would go to fruit, and I expect that will happen. Although I do think that light, which was a light wavelength that would promote vegetative growth, probably helped the plants move right along. And here we are with the cucumber. I just had to show this because it's doing so well. We've picked 5 cucumbers off this plant. The plant's about 5.5 foot tall. It's clear to the top of its string. Will soon be headed back down to the ground. If you look closely, you'll see some bumblebees working the blossoms. This is a good sign because, as we all know, cucumbers, squash, and many of your pepper plants are not self-pollinating, as they have both male and female flowers. Well, over here we have the Miracle-Gro cucumber. Yesterday we picked a nice sized cucumber off this Miracle-Gro plant. And by the way, it is a Boston Pickler cucumber. And we also picked 3 off the Dutch bucket Boston picker cucumber. My wife and I both noticed a distinct difference in flavor. The Dutch bucket cucumbers, which is on Master Blend, was sweet, whereas the Miracle Grow was bitter. We'll keep this in mind because next year it'll definitely be Dutch bucket cucumbers. Off to the left is a ghost pepper that's getting overwhelmed by this cucumber. Well, maybe it needs to put a little heat out. Just to the left of that is my first clone Big Beef. It's been in the system from the beginning, which is about 5 weeks. It hasn't grown a lot. It's very healthy. It's set fruit on. I suspect because it was already ready to blossom. That's one reason there hadn't been a lot of growth. On down, I have 2 nice bell peppers. These are supposed to be red bell peppers. However, as we all know, if you let a pepper, even a green pepper, ripen, it will turn red. These are quite large. They're almost hand size. It won't be long before they're ready to pick. Over here we have my Kentucky Wonder pole beans. If you'll notice, there's 3 beans, 3 holes in the Dutch bucket. Well, the last 2 holes were sprouted in rapid root or starter plugs and then transplanted. The front hole on the right, I just dropped the bean down in the perlite and it germinated, and in fact it's a week younger than the other 2 plants, but it's caught up, and all 3 are up to the trellis strings and reaching skyward. To the left of that we have a Thai Hot. I bought this pepper at Walmart. It was anemic, the leaves were all yellow. I popped it immediately into the Dutch bucket system, and it has shown rapid growth. It's doubled in size, about 2 foot tall. All of these are dark green. We have some nice peppers under development now. They're supposed to be really hot. I've never ate one before, but I'll soon find out. It looks like I'm going to have a bumper crop of hot peppers. Perhaps we should have a hot pepper eating contest on YouTube. What say you, BHP gardener and mean shoes? To the left here is a Sun Glow cherry. I've picked several cherries off of this. There's several more greens set on. This plant is not growing a lot, but when I transplanted it, it already had fruit, so I don't expect you'll see a lot of growth. On the left of this is a hillbilly. It was a late transplant. It's only been in the Dutch buckets about 4 weeks. It does have 1 nice tomato set on. The hillbilly tomatoes are a striped tomato. They get quite large and they're very tasty. I would put them right on par with a Big Beef. This is a cherry tomato, a cherry hot pepper, excuse me, cherry hot pepper. Actually, I bought this on the same day at Walmart. It too had the yellow leaves, and the difference is I left this one set in its dirt cup for 3 weeks before I transplanted it. It's now been in the Dutch bucket about 3 weeks, and the leaves have all turned, all but one there on the left, have all turned dark green. It's doing pretty good, although I don't expect it'll get much larger because it's late in the summer and we know growth will slow down as the sunlight hours dwindle. To the left of this we have 5 clones. The first clone is the big boy, the next clone the Big Beef, another big boy, and 2 more Big Beefs. These first 2 clones were put in the Dutch bucket system about 5 weeks ago, and I must have did something right because they sure did take off. The largest, the Big Beef, is now about 2 foot tall, and they were only about 4 inches tall just a few weeks ago. These last 3 clones have only been in the Dutch bucket system 2 weeks, and they too have taken off. With one, this one right here on the left, which is a big beef, has really tripled in size in a short period. I did do something a little different with these Dutch buckets. The bottom 6 to 8 inches is gravel, and I topped the rest off with perlite. I was thinking that maybe perlite would go a little easier on those fragile roots of seedlings and clones, and I apparently was right. Earlier on, I actually lost a couple seedlings and a couple clones and gravel buckets. Now, I have several Dutch buckets that are nothing but gravel, and they're doing absolutely great, but maybe that was beginner's luck. But I think from now on I'm going to take a very hard look at using perlite. It's not easy to get around here in quantity. You have to buy it at Walmart. But for that matter, neither is pea gravel. The media I use is one of the most expensive things that I'm using in my Dutch bucket system. It runs me about $3 to $4 per bucket. Of course, you could use it over and over again. That's all today, folks. See you again next time.